This is Chuck Mangione, American flugelhorn player, trumpeter, and composer. Now, if you're into the flugelhorn and musicians that fuse jazz with pop, you came to the right place. Chuck Mangione achieved international success in 1978 with his jazz pop single, Feels So Good. Mangione was on fire in the late 70s and early 80s. Now this video will examine the life and music of Chuck Mangione. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the life and music of Chuck Mangione. Mangione came to prominence as a member of Art Blakey's band in the 1960s and later co-led the Jazz Brothers with his brother Gap. He achieved international success in 1978 with his jazz pop single Feels So Good. Mangione has released more than 30 albums since 1960. Mangione was born and raised in Rochester, New York, United States to Italian parents. With his pianist brother Gap, they led the Mangione Brothers Sextet and Quintet, which recorded 3 albums for Riverside Records before Mangione branched out into his other work. One of Chuck's compositions for the Mangione Brothers Sextet, Something Different, was recorded by Cannonball Adderley on his 1961 album African Waltz. He attended the Eastman School of Music from 1958 to 1963, then joined Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, for which he filled the trumpet chair previously held by Clifford Brown, Freddie Hubbard, Bill Hardman, and Lee Morgan. In the late 1960s, Mangione was a member of the band The National Gallery, which in 1968 released the album performing musical interpretations of the paintings of Paul Klee. Mangione served as director of the Eastman Jazz Ensemble from 1968 to 1972. In 1970, he returned to recording with the album Friends and Love, recorded in concert with the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra and guest performers. Mangione's quartet and saxophonist Jerry Nywood was a popular concert and recording act through the 1970s. Bella Via, recorded during his collaboration, won Mangione his first Grammy Award in 1977 in the category Best Instrumental Composition. Bella Via was used by WHAS TV in Louisville, Kentucky as background music for school crossings starting with the blizzard of 1978. Mangione's composition, Chase the Clouds Away, was used in the 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal, Quebec. His composition, Give It All You Got, was the theme to the global television broadcast at the closing ceremonies. In 1978, Mangione composed the soundtrack for the film The Children of Sanchez, starring Anthony Quinn. This album won him his second Grammy in the category of Best Pop Instrumental Performance in 1979. The title song, full version, was almost 15 minutes long and featured a wind section theme. In 1981, Mangione composed and performed the theme for the film The Cannonball Run. In addition to his quartet with Nywood, Mangione had much success with his later 1970s ensemble with Chris Vidala on saxophone and flutes, Grant Geisman on guitars, Charles Meeks on bass guitar, and James Bradley Jr. on drums. This version of Mangione's band recorded and toured behind the hit studio album Feels So Good and Fun and Games and the Children of Sanchez soundtrack. Some band members participated in the Tarantella benefit concert in 1980. The liner notes of the album describe the frenzy in which the performance was put together. Unable to set up on stage the day before, Mangione and his crew had only the day of the show to set up lights, sound, and recording gear. He had only 9 hours the day before to rehearse at A&M Studios with the orchestra's musicians and was never able to run through the entire set list once in its entirety. In December 1980, Mangione held a benefit concert in the Americana Hotel Ballroom in Rochester to benefit the victims of an earthquake in Italy. The 9-hour concert included jazz performers Chick Corea, Steve Gadd, and Dizzy Gillespie, among a host of other session and concert musicians. Soon after, A&M released Tarantella, named for the Italian traditional dance, a vinyl album of some of the concert's exceptional moments. a 1980 issue of Current Biography called Feel So Good, the most recognized tune since Michelle by the Beatles. He raised over $50,000 for St. John Nursing Home at his 60th birthday bash concert at the Eastman Theater and played a few bars of Feel So Good. In 1997, Mangione did a session with Les Paul. Mangione was told of how he beat out Paul for the Album of the Year award. On a personal note, I was introduced to the trumpet September 1978. I was practicing for about 6 months, fell in love with the trumpet. I was in a concert stage band, Dixieland band. At that time, Chuck Mangione's Feel So Good was all over the airwaves. Saw this funny guy with a hat, kind of long hair, hugging that flugelhorn on the album cover of that Feel So Good album. And everybody wanted to play a flugelhorn. Well, we didn't have any flugelhorns, but about 6 months after I started playing trumpet, our music teacher bought a flugelhorn for our class, for our stage band. And all us trumpet players, our jaws dropped when he brought it into the classroom. We all wanted to play it. You had to sign it out for the night, and each of us 4 trumpet guys, we would take our turns each night taking that flugelhorn home, playing it, practicing, and then the music teacher, unbelievable music teacher, got us the B-flat flugelhorn score for the actual chart that Chuck Mangione played on the song. I remember taking that chart home and practicing like anytime I could. And I remember just at that time, the high note in that written part is a high D, and that's just where my range was at the time. And it was always a real struggle to get up to that high D. Loved the flugelhorn from an early age, loved that chart, loved that tune. Feels So Good. I think Chuck Mangione probably introduced a generation of trumpet players to the flugelhorn. I love that mellow vibe, that fat tone. To this day, every album I put out, I make sure there's a flugelhorn solo on each of my albums. As a tribute to Chuck Mangione, he was on fire in the late 70s, early 80s. And I want to say, Chuck, thanks for introducing me and the world to the flugelhorn. You made it fun, you made me want to practice. And I love the tunes and that pop jazz fusion. Still into, loved it then, love it now. Thank you, Chuck. I hope you enjoyed this video on my favorite flugelhorn player of all time, Chuck Mangione. If you've got an artist or band you'd like featured on this channel, pop it in the comments section. I'll make another video. Thanks for dropping by. Rock on.